I'm proud of a few things. My Discord community is vastly growing, and it's cool because the interaction is uncanny. Everybody seems to help each other out. Everybody wants to just like listen to each other's demos, so it's a cool thing. Now there's this one channel that I have instigated a long time ago called Your Video Topic Suggestion, which means you can come up with stuff that you would like me to talk about or questions that you might have. It's been very active over the last week with people asking questions about music production. For instance, top 10 lists. I'm not so keen on top 10 lists. I mean, everybody loves them. I don't really like them, but I managed to work those questions into today's video, for instance. Now, a thing that came up was that people were trying to just like focus on how to create a better groove, how to create better drums, the ABC structure, the letter D transient. How do you work it? Now, this is what your beat should sound like if you follow my steps. That's today's video. You ready for that? Let's go do it right now. Yo, check it out. I'm in a location and thank you for checking out yet another video. Now, if this is your first time here, don't hesitate to click subscribe and hit that notification bell. Whenever I upload a new video, you'll be kept in the loop and you'll not miss out on anything. Stick around till the end of this video. I'll tell you all about Discord and Patreon, and I'll tell you about the community. But before I get into today's video, I have to say something first. I apologize for analog courses. Basically, the excuse is that there is no excuse. It's a one-guy operation, me. I've got some help, but the channel blew up so fast that I bit off a little bit more than I can chew. And it's not that I didn't record stuff. I recorded a million videos actually, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I want to really do it the correct way. So please bear with me because it is coming. As a matter of fact, I know it's going to be better than most courses out there because a lot of people are just telling you how something works. They never tell you why something works in a way. So I'm figuring out a way to make it very simple for you to understand stuff that I know and stuff that works for me for over the last 3 decades. So bear with me. Analog courses is coming. Again, sorry that it's taken so long, but it's on the way. A lot of people look at things from a simple perspective. One pitfall. This came up on my Discord as well. People say like, yeah, you know, what are the top 10 mistakes not to make when you're going DAWless, for instance. This was a cool thing. I thought Lemmy came up with that. Okay, I'm not gonna name 10 because as I said, I'm not a top 10 kind of guy, but if I have to name one is that, or if I have to name two, is that two things is people expect this box to be the be all and end all. That's one. You know, people just go and they'll buy a box and this is now going to save their lives. Another mistake is that they don't really master a certain part of the equipment that well. So from the minute they think they know how it works, they buy another thing and it just ends up being a flight case filled with stuff you don't really know. So at some point it's going to just like stop, right? Because if you don't advance or it's getting too difficult for you to understand what's going on, you don't progress at all. Another thing is that people think that they can just buy a box and that it sounds great out of the box. They don't understand that you need to work that as well. Work the sound a little bit. So my suggestion, get a box. Don't spend too much money on it. Don't make it too complicated. Organize and orientate yourself before you buy it and then get into the workflow a little bit. And then by the time you've got money to buy it or you have bought it, you know, just master your gear first and then progress on to the next box. That's what I would like to say in that regard. Now, when it comes to the sound production, knowing the box is also knowing what you can do with it and what you can expect from it and also what not to expect from it. And this is an important part, especially for today's video, because we're going to get into how we're going to work the production, how we're going to work the drums. I'm going to throw a scope up on the screen so I can tell you about this letter D in the kick, and I can tell you about the different layers of hi-hats, and I can tell you about why an 808 tom works in what frequency range, you know what I mean? This is stuff that I do think you need to just like get under your belt even before you think of performing. If it's just a hobby, it's no problem. If you got more ambitions, then obviously it's cool to just like dive into it. I mean, I did, and it's not as difficult as you might think it is. Actually, it's simpler than you think it is. It's just common sense and getting to grips with just getting on with it, really. Okay, enough talk. Let's get to the live set and let's make this beat. Let's make the best beat ever, all right? Let's go do it. All right, people, let's get the show on the road. Okay, we're going to talk about grooves and how they work and what you should do to get the best groove possible ever. Okay, quickly going over what I have. If you don't know it, if you're new here, thanks for watching. Okay, we're going from right to left. So there's the Akai MPC Live. The MIDI comes from here. Some drums come from here. But this is the brain of the operation when it comes to the songs that are being made. I will make them here. The question I got in a comment on a YouTube video was why do I only use 4 tracks here? Well, I've used 8, so 8 sequences for one song. Intro, the next level up, breakdown, and an outro or just a reprise or a bridge or whatever. But I've found that if I want to keep my song moving and moving quickly and keep the crowd also engaged, I shouldn't be giving myself too many options, because this was break number 1, this was break number 2, and then there was a lead in and another outro, and it's cool, but it kind of sparsed up the track a little bit too much. It was too long, and I want to just like switch faster. So I came up with a new idea, which is only 4 different segments in a track, because the intro can also double up as an outro, obviously, and there's tricks in the muting. So there's stuff that I mute over on the desk, there's stuff that I mute over on the controller. We'll get to that. And then the drum computer of some sorts is the Octatrack. The Octatrack is just taking care of 7 tracks of drums on line, 6 tracks of drums even. Track number 7 on the Octatrack is a musical information kind of sample and hold thing that comes out of my sample and hold packs. I made those catalysts to drive your music, because otherwise it's going to be only drums, and you know, and drums by themselves are just bare, and also the synths by themselves are also a bit like bare, because it's not 1986. However, I do love that era, but if I tell you I just can't get enough, you hear that Vince Clarke's drums and synthesizers, it just sounds a little bit dated. So that's what happens with the DAWless setup as well. I will try and get into as many questions that I saw pop up on my Discord as I go along, which was another question, is how do you get your track to really work? How do you get your sounds to really work? Well, this is the trick also that I do, is that I flirt with the outside world, which means I use samples alongside drum computers. And what we're going to get into today is how do you get these things to work together. Let's start with the kick drum first, right? Okay, so the kick. I've got my kick sitting here on channel number 1. I don't EQ it on the mixer, but I've got a scope also aligned, so I'll pop that up on the screen so you can hear it. When I'm looking at this EQ, taking out some low end, you can see that most of the energy is centered around one specific frequency. And when we look at, for instance, this EQ, you got bass, mid-range, and treble, much like a DJ mixer EQ. So it means that there's treble on the top as well. So this is the frequency. Now, the letter D that I always talk about is the attack that happens in the mid-range. Now it's more of the letter T for Ted. And now it becomes more the letter D for Dirk. So you can see that the pronunciation and the initial attack, you can clearly see on screen what happens in the mid-range section. There's a dip, and then here there's a sweep. You can see it clearly sweep as a sort of a wave which is going. So you see the fundamental, I should say. Now I try to keep a middle ground between what I want out of this mid-range, because I don't want this to be too much. Sometimes you have to do it, but that's more on a production level because compressors and that kind of stuff can take care of this. Now in my mind it becomes the letter B for boob. And now you can hear clearly that the attack transient, say the articulation of the sound, let me put it that way, starts to become sharper and sharper and sharper and sharper and sharper until it becomes the dominant sound. So if you're clearly listening to the kick and you're trying to determine out of how many sounds does it consist, start with the mid-range and keep everything level. So take away and add to it, you know, subtract and add. That's how that works. Now the rest of my drums, let's just turn them off quick fast. Before I get to the drums, let me just say what the rest of the box is. 2 effects. Those are being sent to a send on the desk, and the return just comes back here. I just stuck it on the faders. Then there is the stereo output here of the Akai MPC Live, and then 3 different outputs come out of the Octatrack, because the kick is coming out separately. As you can see, the rest of the drums are coming out of the stereo output here. There's 8 mono outputs and 2 stereo outputs, which means that makes up for 12, hence the name DM12, Midas mixer. Now, because I've got the rest of the drums sitting next to my kick drum, this is the kick drum on 1, this is the kick drum on 1 on the mixer as well, it means that now the rest of the drums are coming out of a different section of the mixer, which means I can now easily, this fader is going fast, yeah, it's going, no effect, it's gone, well, let's not do that again. So, but there's, luckily there's 2 different places where I can mute my kick. Now the rest of the drums, you can clearly hear what's happening. Let's look at the scope. If I'm just muting this, muting it here. You see, this is how high that hi-hat is actually. Now, if I'm using the EQ here, which I'm not using, you see it shift, goes all the way up, now it goes to the mid-range. Now, I've already done this ahead of time. I looked at what the frequency was for this hi-hat. I don't want it to be here, which is a mistake a lot of people make. Here we go. Another question that came up on my Discord was what are the common mistakes that a lot of people make. A lot of people think that within the frequency spectrum, which you can see on the scope, which is what we as human beings can perceive, which is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, 20,000 hertz, that's the audible spectrum if you're young and fresh and never entered a club. I think in my situation, I think the 20 kilohertz might be 18, 17 or something, whatever. Our hearing perishes older we get, but a lot of people, what they do, my point, is they'll over-exaggerate the high frequencies, and the high frequencies are the sharpest. They are being perceived as the loudest because they're so in your face, they're very sharp. So what I try to do is, there's a rule that you need to also keep in mind. The high frequencies go lower than you think, and the low frequencies go higher than you think, which means that around maybe 1, 2, 3 thousand, 3K, maybe 4K, that's already high there. This might sound muffled to you. I can assure you, if you hear this on a loud sound system, it will still shoot razor blades into your eardrum, so you should always be careful with that. And also try to get a good balance between the two. So if we got our kick, so I would suggest to turn it off and then open it up and find a sweet spot on where it sits. Now I've already done this with every drum on the Octatrack because I don't want to go in here and fiddle about, so I'm literally just opening this up thinking, okay, this works, right? You can see it on the scope as well. Now the hat's already there, but look, the kick drum is completely pounding. I think it's about 3 dBs extra. And my hats are just like making sure of the cadence, which I think is a very important part. Now, if I add more drums, there's another thing that I think is very important. Let's take the head out first and focus on the low end frequency content right here. There you go, there's a tom. Now this tom, let's take out a kick. You can clearly see its fundamental being in a space, and you can clearly see the kick drum being in a different spot. Kick there, boom. Was waiting for that. So these things can overlap a little bit. So if you want to have workable drums, another rookie mistake a lot of people make is when they look at the sound spectrum, they'll just place their different sounds into this frequency window, is how we call it, the 20 hertz, the 20K. You have to space out all your sounds because every sound has its own fundamental. You can clearly see it once you look at a scope, like, okay, listen, the initial transient of the sound works in a specific frequency part of the frequency spectrum, and what you don't want is different things to be on that same axis. So you need to just like shift it a little bit. Now the sound is never this one peak, it's always going to be a curve, and this is where the magic happens, because if you can stick two fundamentals closely together, once they overlap, they're going to start to interfere. But once you space them apart a little bit, then the curves will cross over, which is exactly what it's called, a crossover point. So with this kick and this tom, I'm trying to find a crossover point, and funny enough, your brain picks up on this. So look at the scope and look where the tom is. Boom, there you go. You see fundamental of the kick. Boom. So you can clearly see what's happening. I love this Melda production plugin, by the way. Did I say plugin? Yes, I did. I love it. And then look what happens if I'm entering a clap, for instance. It takes a while to get used to looking at this kind of stuff, right? So where's this clap? Clap is over here. So then you know what to look for. Tom. And I deliberately made this tom a little bit louder. Now it sounds compressed already. I'm used to that sound because I've been working with compressors for ages, but it takes a while to really find your way around it. Now, what I would suggest is you getting all the drums that I have. Get a kick drum, get an 808 tom, get some sort of a clap, but this clap is, it's a snare and a clap or a side stick of some sort, and I'm filtered it down a little bit so you can hear that it doesn't sound that audible, or at least it's audible enough, but it's not like in your face. Now, another trick to use is the 808 closed hat. The 808 closed hat will lay a blanket of frequency, of a certain frequency in a certain spot, and it's always there. Sometimes you even forget that it's there, but once you turn it off, you're going to miss it. So with the hat, it's just a beat and a groove, and then it becomes a little bit, so it glues the rest of this thing together. With the clap, even though that I've filtered it down, there's still some high-end frequency content in there. Not a lot, but you can still almost make out that this is going to be the portal to your higher places. So in terms of the ABC structure, in terms of the how would you look at your frequencies, these are the low. This is a low end, as you can see. Then this is your mid-range, and this is going to be your high-end content. You can clearly see that on the scope, right? Low, mid, and high. Now, you can see that the hi-hat is pretty sharp, pretty there. It's not that high, but you can see it on the scope that is really, it's got a lot of energy in a certain part of the frequency spectrum, as does the kick. Now, if I listen to all my drums, you see that they're well balanced. but I leave some room in the mid. Because in the mid-range is where I put some leads of the synthesizer that I got here. I got a Dave Smith Tetris thing here, Minitars here, and then there's this acid box that filters a lot of stuff in there. So you'll see that if you were to play something there, let's first go back. Don't go too fast. Okay. As I said, I've got more drums coming from the there you go. So these drums, as you can hear, are not as high as the drums that are coming out of the Octatrack. So taking out the kick. Taking out the kick here, sorry. Taking out the drums here. Let's just take out the... So there's another tom here, which plays together with... So there's two. Here. And they're actually clashing, to be honest. Boom. Is what I hear now. I didn't even hear it. But at the same time, I think this might be considered dissonant because it still gives a little bit of energy in the groove. Another mistake, if we're going back to the mistake that some people are making, people tend to focus on stuff in solo. So they listen to this like this and they try to determine whether that sound is going to work. Even if you see you're panning stuff hard left, hard right, and it's just completely sounding crap when you listen to it in solo, it always needs to be considered on how does it work in the grand scheme of things. If everything plays together, it doesn't still work out. So I've got toms right here. Let's turn this off. So there's hi-hats playing, but look at the scope here. It's not so much the hi-hat that we've got over here. And where this has got a lot of high-end information, this closed 808 hat. Here is a bit of a tambourine, which pretty much does the same thing, but you can hear that the hat here is yeah, a little bit lower in its frequency content. Because if I stick this in, you can clearly hear that I added another drum. Now, I hope this is not too confusing, but you can hear that, okay, now I've got my stuff here. Another sound that I have that plays on the first, which was this sound. You heard this sound before, you heard me do this thing. Now, so this is my MPC. This is what's coming from the MPC as some sort of a blanket, right? So if I take the MPC out, there's nothing there. If I'm listening to what's happening with my Octatrack, so this is the Octatrack, this is the MPC, and then there's a bass line that plays off the MPC as well, which does now. What I always try to do with bass lines like this, as you can hear, it plays a little bit of a loop in itself. So, which is easy to do if you use two different bass notes. One has got more of the zoom, the belly of the sound, and the other one's got more of the attack. And then you just like play those different bass notes and make a sequence out of those, and then they will always work. Now, this is a classic progressive house approach, but I think you can do it with different styles of music as well. So how does this work? Because this sits well on top of the kick drum. I'm looking at the scope. So you can clearly feel that every little transient of this bass line is folded around the kick drum. And if you listen carefully, you can hear that the attacks here resemble that letter D as well that we found in the kick as well, right? So you can hear that this da da do do da 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 does the same thing on this kick drum. So they're related. You might say they live on the same block, probably not in the same house, but on the same street. So it's related, which means your brain will always pick up on it. And one thing I didn't address is you have to understand that this gets amplified by a gazillion once you get to a club sound system. So you don't want to, like I said with the high end, you don't want to exaggerate stuff. You know, if I'm accelerating the low end on the kick, which I hear a lot of people do, not a rookie mistake, things start to just like take your attention too much, and you would like to get like this unified sort of sound going. Now let's say take the head out, take that close head out, and let's see what we have here. And I'm trying to just really think of, do I need more? Do I need to put more in? Not really. I mean, for this, I don't really need to stick more stuff in if I don't have to. But the rest of it is just, yeah, candy, right? You have to dance to this. You should be able to dance to this like forever without you asking what's going on. The one thing that distracts me is that clap in the reverb here, which is, I don't know where it's coming from even, but it's coming from 7. This should be cool, right? You should be able to dance to this. It's dance music. Let the sound system work for you. Make sure that your drums always do something that will feed the speakers. Don't force the speaker. A little bit of theory on speakers. They will push on every transient that you're doing. If you give them too much to do, at some point they're going to try and do their best for you, but you know, if you strain it too much, they will have to just like make too big of a movement in terms of the different sounds. If one sound peaks and another sound is in a different way and it tries to peak, the only result is that the speaker cannot amplify your sound as efficiently as it should or could do. So what happens is your whole track gets just softer, which is what happens if you start clipping, which is not a bad thing if it's analog clipping and it just does it like this. But I come across a lot of DJs that when I get to the DJ box, for some reason this thing seems to be taped on or something. It's like there's always a green and a yellow and a red sort of like stripe, and it doesn't even move anymore. And then still they're opening up the EQ and trying to think like the limiter in the club is going to just like screw out everyone else but not them, you know? So the more you keep a little bit of a breathing situation within your tracks, within your drums especially, take it out. Within that, then it should be sweet, really. Now, another thing that I didn't address is listen to the artifacts that are on my kick. It's not a kick that plays tick, tick, tick. No, if I go in here, you'll see that the kick, let me just shorten it for you. There's still a little bit of towards the end, but there's a bit of a, this is something that I have adopted from my years of sampling back in the days when we were just stealing everything we could steal, when samplers were fast enough to steal anything we could steal. So I would love for this, I don't know, sorry for the bad singing, but I just love this little part that's towards the back of the kick. I love it because it means within the digital world, we are now trying to just add stuff to saturate the sound. Back in the days, we were noise gating the sound to get rid of the noise. So everything has gone 180 degrees now, but if I can sample something like this, and it is a sampled loop, so you can see there's more kicks. I'm only using the one because I don't want to just loop it. I just want to have this thing play. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, I'll turn the time stretch off also, otherwise it's going to do stuff with the kick that I don't want. So this is the kick. Does the kick need to be in tune? It can be, but it doesn't have to be. And this to me in my brain was also something I needed to get the grips with, because my music education tells me everything needs to be in tune, in key. At the same time, I've come across kick drums that don't really work that well because they're not in tune, but they kick ass on the dance floor. So I'm like, you know what? If it sounds great and it does what it does, let's just run with that, you know? The musical elements are here, for instance. Now, if you've got a musical ear like me, you hear that this kick is not in tune with the rest of the drums, but do you mind it? Now you don't hear it anymore because I've got, again, some sort of a catalyst that drives the groove a little bit more, and then there's this sound that I've got right here to completely throw you off and put you on a different sort of like mindset. Okay, now that you know what is in the track, let's focus a little bit on bass, because once you got everything going here, you have to also think on what else can I just add to it. Here, yeah man, this thing's gone. It's gone! It's a goner! Amazing sound, I have to say, especially for the price range, but you can see that the build quality is not there, but what can you expect? Mixer's something, 250 maybe, so it's a very cheap mixer. Does wonders if you're not traveling with it and you're not performing with it. I think it's going to live longer than how I have tempered with it. Cool. Now, those are all the drums that are playing in this endeavor. If I was going to, and this is the last thing that I want to address, going to a different sort of like sound, maybe the last pattern here, 2, 3, and now let's open up. You see how it works as a jigsaw now? This is you can hear how the effects work with the bass sound. And it helps to just like stick this mixer in front of your face with your studio monitors. Don't do this stuff on a headphone. Do it on studio monitors and just like turn it down. Turn that shit down and listen to it very carefully. Because now the effects are pretty loud. But that's because this auxiliary send is very active. I can't, you know, if I put it out at 1/4, it's already a lot of send that it's doing. So I love to have a little bit of this control here. And then of course there's another sound that plays on the Akai that you don't hear right now. So I'll go in and I'll just turn this on. Also, a thing that I didn't mention on last week's video is how the routing went. The Dave Smith Tetra goes into the octa track and then comes out of the stereo. So I save up extra 2 outputs here. And the same goes for this sound that you hear now. I've cheekily routed it out of output 3 and 4 into this thing and go back into the input of the Akai MPC and then come out of the stereo. So again, there's another 2 outputs that I save here so that I can keep it simple. So this does not got a dedicated aux return, which I think they have these 2 stereo faders for because there's 2 sends. So I think they want you to use 8 mono or 4 stereo, whatever, and then use the stereos as a return. But you know, I'm stubborn, so I always want to do something else. But you can hear now how my drums are still working, right? So I switched from a sample drum coming out of here, out of this other pattern that I had. Let's go back to that pattern and go back here. And the thing that keeps everything in check is the Hihat here. Now, there's another trick, and this is the last thing that I'm going to tell you. You have to always make sure that there's a fail-safe in place. So if this breaks down, I still got hats here. If this breaks down, I still got hats here, right? All right, gang. Go and try it out for yourself, see if it works. Let me know how you go on. Leave a comment in the section below. I explained in the beginning of this video, it is coming. Analog Courses is coming. As a matter of fact, I will even say that it is the best course that I've ever thought of. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I would love for it to be watertight, which it cannot be, but that's obviously... so I did record a lot of stuff, and I deleted a lot of stuff because I'm like, oh no, it's not good enough and people are going to do this. So yeah, I got a bit insecure along the way, as it's different to just like drop a video, 30 minutes of me doing what I've been doing for the last 3 decades. It's something else if you want to teach people stuff. So yes, it's coming, definitely. And it's going to be one of the best courses ever, because I do think there's a gap in the market there. There's a big gap in the market. Everybody just like either wants to sell you something, or they just want to tell you how stuff works, but they never tell you why you should make the move that you make. So this curriculum of how I work my equipment is going to be exactly that. You know, this is the box, but this is what you can do with it, and this is how you should work it if this is what you would like to get out of it, right? Sounds simple enough? That's where we're getting. So I did record, I am recording. Please bear with me, it's on the way. Thank you for your patience anyway. And thank you for watching. If you made it this far into the video, you're an absolute superstar. Now, the mixer front, we're still getting there. Also, same thing, working with Ferry, working with Christian. There's so many different things that have to come into play, but it's also coming. So I'm very excited, as you can see and tell. Yeah, because it's a new day, it's a new dawn. So we're heading there. Patreon is a support platform where you can get on board if you would like to get closer to me directly. Every Friday night after the chats, after the video, we do chats. We talk about a lot of stuff, and yeah, it's a cool thing because I've got Patreon connected to Discord, and yeah, as I said in the beginning, that's where the magic happens. That's how this video came to be, even because everybody just interacts. Just sitting in your room with a case full of equipment is cool. But isn't it cool to find like-minded peers and talk about it? And when you run into trouble, have people help you out with it? Well, that's what my Discord is. I'm very proud of the very vibrant and vastly growing community, as is this channel. It grows like weed. So thank you for being here. I guess that's that for today. My name is Analog Kitchen. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next week. You know where, here, on another video. Watch this space. Stay tuned. Stay safe. I'll see you later. Peace.